This edition of The Globalist was first broadcast on the 10th of July 2026 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist, in association with UBS. This is The Globalist, broadcasting to you live from Midori House in London. I'm Georgina Godwin. On the show ahead...
It's important to be heard, it's important to make these connections, and it's important to translate these connections into action, and action into full partnerships.
Mark Carney is in Saudi Arabia, seeking closer economic ties with the kingdom. Can Canada's previous objections to human rights violations be forgotten? Should they be? The United Nations says the actions of the RSF in Sudan amount to genocide. But what will this official report change on the ground? Will it stop? And can anyone be held accountable? We'll have a rustle through the front pages and examine the rise of Uniqlo's parent company. Then, Taiwan's exports have surged by nearly 50%. Is it all down to the manufacture of AI tools? Friday always brings us a lighter look at the wild world of current affairs with Andrew Muller. Plus, we'll hear about the latest gadgets from our tech correspondent, David Phelan. And I'm beyond excited. He is bringing a pair of smart glasses for me to try. And finally, Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs will also be joining me in the studio.
Hi Georgina, I'll be here with an arts and culture wrap, including the world's biggest photography festival that kicked off this week.
That's all ahead here on The Globalist, live from London. First, a look at what else is happening in the news. Iran and the United States have exchanged fresh attacks, further eroding their ceasefire and bringing oil tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz almost to a standstill. Vladimir Putin is expected to intensify the war in Ukraine, with sources close to the Kremlin saying he remains determined to capture the whole of the Donbass, despite Donald Trump's push for peace. And Western Europe has recorded its hottest June on record after extreme temperatures caused thousands of excess deaths and disrupted schools, transport and power supplies. Do stay tuned to Monocle Radio for more on those stories. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney concludes a 3-day visit to Saudi Arabia today. It's the first visit by a Canadian leader to the kingdom in 26 years and follows his trip to the Nato summit in Ankara. A previous diplomatic split with Saudi Arabia over human rights appears to be mended as Carney looks to diversify his country's economic dependence on the US, with Ottawa's second biggest trading partner in the Gulf region. Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Neil Quilliam, who's Associate Fellow with the Middle East and North Africa programme at Chatham House, and by Paul Waldie, Europe correspondent at The Globe and Mail. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Paul, why is Carney making this trip now?
Well, I think this is all part of Carney's effort to broaden Canada's trade horizons. There's been some criticism that Carney doesn't really have a foreign policy. He has a trade policy, and he pretty much views the world through the lens of how do we move Canada away from its overdependence on the U.S. because obviously of Trump's tariff wars and that kind of thing. So, he's been repairing relations with an awful lot of countries that Canada had some pretty nasty falling outs with, and that includes China, India, Turkey, and now Saudi Arabia.
And Paul, what was on the agenda and has it been achieved? The meeting wraps up today.
Well, it was signing a whole bunch of memorandums of understanding and a whole bunch of agreements on trade and investment in these kinds of things. Canada, Saudi Arabia trade is pretty small. It's only about $4 billion in total. I think Canada imports about $2 billion worth of energy and exports about $1 billion worth of mainly auto parts and things like that. So I think this is looking very much to the future. And I think it's about Carney sending more of a signal that, Canada right now at this point is prepared to do business with pretty much anyone.
And Neil, if I could bring you in here, what does Saudi Arabia gain from these new agreements?
It gets to, number one, repair its relationship with Canada, of course, but it is also in its position where it's diversifying its relationships. The US is still its major economic partner and security partner, but given what the Trump administration has done in the region this year, it's certainly looking to sort of diversify out and build new relationships, not just trade, but security relationships too.
And how has the kingdom and the wider region, in fact, viewed this visit by Carney? Is he welcome?
Yes, no, absolutely. He's very welcome. I mean, Saudi Arabia and the other five GCC states very much see themselves as this rising middle power. And I think, Carney's speech, Davos in January, sort of resonated with that. So they identify themselves as part of this cadre of middle powers that are really surging forward. And they see that as very much sort of giving them validation, playing that important role where they are looking to attain a little bit of strategic autonomy, still very dependent on the US, but taking important steps. And this is one of those.
And Paul, what of the previous split over human rights? What caused it, and is it now in the past?
Well, it started in 2018 when then Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland, who was Foreign Minister under Justin Trudeau, she sent a tweet out sort of criticizing Saudi Arabia's human rights record, criticizing some incidents that had happened with some women's rights activists. Then, of course, we had the Khashoggi murder not that long afterwards. So Canada took a really firm stand and a pretty aggressive stand at going after Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of questions about whether or not sending a tweet like that was the smartest thing for a foreign minister to do. But nonetheless, the Trudeau administration was kind of following along the lines of a lot of Liberal administrations in Canada and taking a pretty, again, hard stand on human rights issues. Now, of course, Carney has come into office and pretty much as a Liberal Prime Minister and pretty much thrown that out and said, yesterday in Saudi Arabia that, we're not going to lecture countries from afar and that we have to engage in these kinds of things. So it's a complete shift, certainly in Liberal policy and in Canadian policy. But I think right now, Canadians don't care. They're worried about the U.S. They're worried about trade with the U.S. and they're prepared to back Carney.
And has Carney had any political pushback from people who think that the human rights abuses should still be on the agenda?
Yeah, he has. It's interesting. We, in our article about this today, quoted Lloyd Axworthy. He's a longtime Liberal. He was a foreign minister under several prime ministers going back many years ago. He's come out and he's been pretty critical of Carney, saying he's very uncomfortable with this approach. It turns around Liberal policy for a long time. And he criticized Carney for not really having a foreign policy and saying, look, this is very transactional. It's not something he's comfortable with, Axworthy that is, and that he doesn't view this as kind of the way the Liberal Party should be headed.
Neil, how does the kingdom view being held to account over issues such as these?
I mean, it's sensitive towards them, but I think since 2017, we've seen with Mohammed bin Salman becoming de facto leader, we've seen him sort of commit a number of foreign policy blunders, war in Yemen, the Khashoggi affair, locking up his cousins and others in the Ritz-Carlton. But since then, I mean, things have sort of quietened down. They've softened down. They've very much kind of engaged internationally, trying to sort of leave those things in the past. And I think they're becoming less sensitive around those issues and probably just far more kind of pragmatic and transactional themselves in their relations.
And pragmatic's exactly the word, really, isn't it, Paul? Canada has a very pragmatic attitude. Is this driven by this necessary pivot away from the US?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think Carney's made that pretty clear for the last year. And in fairness to him, he's not really apologizing for it. He's certainly saying that he's had approaches now with Erdogan and Turkey. And of course, Canada had issues with Turkey not that long ago. Again, as I mentioned, China, India, now Saudi Arabia. So he's not apologizing for this. He's kind of made it his mission to diversify Canadian trade, which Canada's been trying to do for a very long time. And in some respects, Trump has forced the issue with canceling the agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. So I think he says he's looking at the world realistically and saying we just have to do this.
And finally, for you, Neil, for Saudi Arabia, who is their most important trading partner, and who would they like to strengthen ties with? How far up that index does Canada come?
I mean, China is the major trading partner. The US comes in next, and then Europe. I mean, Canada is sort of way down the list. Is sort of probably about 7th or 8th, or even lower than that. But I mean, as I said before, I mean, it's really looking to sort of diversify its relationships, sort of create this horizontal network or web with middle powers. So it's an important player, but it's not major. It's not the most important.
Dr. Neil Quilliam, Associate Fellow at Middle East and North Africa Programme at Chatham House, and Paul Waldy, Europe Correspondent at the Globe and Mail. Thank you both very much. This is The Globalist. To Sudan now. A United Nations investigation says the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, carried out mass killings, gang rapes, abductions and deliberate starvations during the siege and capture of Al Fasher in North Darfur, and that those crimes amount to genocide. The RSF denies targeting civilians. The findings matter not only because of what happened at Al Fasher, but also what might happen next. UN officials are warning of another human rights catastrophe around El Obeid, a key city in central Sudan where hundreds of thousands of people could be at risk. There's also growing scrutiny of the RSF's outside support. Sudan's army-aligned government has accused the United Arab Emirates of arming the group, which the UAE denies. The ICC says it has new evidence from Darfur. Well, I'm joined now by Yassmin Abdel-Magied, who's a Sudanese-Australian broadcaster, author and, I think it's fair to say, activist. You've been very, very prominent on the front of trying to raise awareness around Sudan and what's going on there now. Yassmin, thank you very much for coming in. What did the UN investigators find in Al Fasher?
So this report, or this fact-finding mission, has been going on for some time. And there was actually an earlier initial finding out in February which said that there were the hallmarks of genocide, of war crimes, of mass killings, of gang rape, and of deliberate starvation as a part of intentional policy by the RSF, or intentional kind of strategic ways of frankly oppressing a particular group of people. I mean, it's really difficult to talk about because it's also what the fact-finding mission has found is that these are the same techniques, the same tactics, the same strategy that we saw in Darfur 20 years ago. And this is really reinforcing what Sudanese people have said, and particularly Darfurians have said for a long time, which is the genocide that we're seeing today is only a continuation of the genocide that began in 2003. And it is... Yes, there's kind of government policy, like it began as a policy by Omar al-Bashir and his regime to kind of suppress the people in Darfur and in the west of Sudan. But it took on, ethnic and tribal characterizations, or ultimately, it began to be, and it is now determined, that there's active and deliberate targeting of non-Arab groups. So this also means that if you appear to be somebody who is from a particular tribe, whether it's the Fur people, so Darfur also refers to the people of Fur, Dar being house, Fur being the name of the tribe, and similar groups, you will be targeted. And the kinds of, the reports of the kinds of techniques, the ways in which people were raped in rooms amongst bodies of their killed family members, for example. You just can't, it's really unimaginable, the suffering. And in Al Fasher in particular, there was a siege of about 500 days, and Sudanese activists and Sudanese advocates and people paying attention to what was going on the ground said over and over again, this is a situation where genocide will happen if there is an action. And actually very recently here in the United Kingdom, in London, there was a parliamentary hearing where the Yale, and I can't remember the exact name of the lab, but it's it uses open source technology to kind of look at and to determine what is happening on the ground when you can't get people onto the ground. Nathaniel Raymond, who's the head of that group, talked about how he spoke to officials here in the UK and they chose not to raise this issue with the United Arab Emirates because of allyship, because of wanting to sort of maintain business interests. And so you can kind of see all these links. And now we're here in a situation again where we're warning of the same sort of situation in Al Obeid. Al Obeid is capital of North Kordofan. It's this key. I've been there. My family lived there for a while. My aunt I was talking to her very recently, and her and her husband were doctors in the region for a long period of time. They're very connected to that community, but it is also a place where it's a hub now for many other displaced people. So many of these hubs in Sudan are already home to many displaced people, and it is now under siege again, and it'll be the same tactics used again and again. Activists and advocates, and now the United Nations is saying the same situation that we saw in El Fasher, where there have now been determinations of war crimes and genocide, are going to happen again. And I just really wonder what will happen.
I mean, now we have this official report saying it is genocide. What happens to that evidence? Could people land in court, and can it be used to stop this terrible violence?
So I think those are separate questions. I think, yes, there's the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and officials are saying that the evidence this time around is even more rigorous, right? And so there's a hope that, okay, maybe this time there will be individuals that will be able to be charged in court. But the case of how do we stop what's happening now? I mean, these are completely different questions, right? I think that anyone who is paying any attention has been aware of the level of war crime. And this is a legal determination. This is literally having the video evidence and having the testimonials and so on. And so what we need to stop what is happening right now is political will. But in the case where there is no political will, in the political situation we're in today, I think all we can hope for is that at some point justice will be served.
And why hasn't it been already, Yassmin? Why is the crisis in Sudan not getting the international attention that it deserves?
I honestly wish I could answer that with clarity. I really, really struggle, because if we were talking about the numbers are there. If we were talking about the scale of catastrophe, the scale of catastrophe is there. If we're talking about evidence, the evidence is there. It's not as if we don't know what is happening on the ground. There is a lack of political will. That is one. There is, frankly, the fact that those who are arming the RSF and funding the RSF, like the United Emirates, among others, are not a state actor that people, it's not a democracy, so that it's not as if the civilians or the citizens of the UAE can actually change what the government is doing in their position. But also, other states aren't really putting pressure on the UAE. Even when we saw in the old administration, David Cameron, I think, said something very slightly to the UAE and they flipped, right? They are not a state actor that is interested in being told what to do by anyone.
To be fair, they have denied any involvement.
Of course. But it's also, there is a sense, I think, as well, that people can get away with things in Sudan, frankly. Because if we know a genocide happened in Darfur, how many people have been held accountable for the genocide in Darfur in 2003? And how are we here today, over 20 years later, talking about the same types of war crimes, the same genocide? You can be forgiven. I mean, the Sudanese people can be forgiven for thinking that justice will never come. But at the same time, I think we all have to hope that it will.
Yassmin Abdel-Magied, Sudanese-Australian broadcaster and author, thank you very much indeed. Yassmin's latest book is called At Sea. Now, still to come in the programme.
We learned that, to paraphrase Marx and indeed Engels, a spectre was haunting the United States.
Monocle's contributing editor Andrew Muller will be bringing you his weekly wry look back at the last 7 days. This is The Globalist.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, an obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office Houseview, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Let's continue now with today's newspapers, and joining me in the studio is Zara Khan, writer, author and former CNN international journalist. Zara, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Are you a football fan?
I am when there's rivalries involved. Yes.
Tell me who you support.
I recently started supporting Morocco after my two teams, Turkey and Egypt, were knocked out.
Right. Okay, so how do you feel about the result last night? You better explain for people who didn't watch the game.
So last night, France beat Morocco 2-0. Morocco, last World Cup, made it to the semifinals, the first of any African team. And for the first half, it looked kind of promising. It was 0-0. There was a penalty from France, which they missed very early on, very unusual for Mbappe. And then France came to win it 2-0. And I think the interesting thing here is kind of the mix of the colonial history. France and Morocco faced off last semifinals in the World Cup. France beat Morocco. So this was kind of Morocco's chance to redeem itself, and they did kind of flunder in front of the world stage.
Because, of course, Morocco was a protectorate of France, I think, from 1912 to 1956.
Yes.
And then there were all these waves of immigration. And I think the New York Times says about 1.5 million people of Moroccan descent now live in France, which is quite a significant number.
Yes, and most of the Moroccan team were not actually born in Morocco. They recently beat the Netherlands, and I think a high number of players on the Moroccan side were born in the Netherlands, just as their star player had been wearing a France kit just before the World Cup stage and decided to wear the Morocco jersey to support Morocco.
So many sort of split loyalties here.
So many split loyalties, and also it makes sense from a perspective. You have a really high caliber French team. As a young Moroccan player, you'll get more playing time if you play for Morocco. And it's also really interesting seeing this new generation kind of pick their side. If their parents Moroccan, they came to France, maybe they feel more ties to their parents' home country and wanting to support that Morocco jersey.
Yeah. Let's go to Ankara now. And of course, the NATO summit has just wrapped up there with some extraordinary behaviour by Donald Trump, but also something a little odd from Erdogan, who gave his departing guests a rather bizarre gift.
Yes, I have never seen this before from Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey. So the summit, as you mentioned, was in Ankara. And it kind of is, he gave everyone an engraved Turkish revolver filled with live rounds. Like, the comedy kind of writes itself. And what's interesting is seeing everyone's kind of reaction to it. Starmer had to hand his over to UK authorities because it's illegal to enter the UK with live ammunition. I think in the Brussels airport, De Wever handed his to the airport police. Mark Carney kind of hilariously felt he measured short with his gift to Erdogan of maple syrup.
Well, I can see how those are not equal gifts at all. But I wonder how they even got into the airport. How did they get out the country?
I don't know. It has been reported people were kind of surprised to find this gift because I think it was enclosed in kind of like a formal box. And then to open it up,
Yeah, always look inside the goodie bag before you go on public transport, I think is the message that we can take from this.
Exactly.
But of course, what Turkey's really trying to do here is highlight their arms trade.
Yes, I mean, I think it's Turkey kind of displaying maybe not even soft, but overt power. All these European leaders coming to Turkey, now turning to Turkey as kind of the biggest supporter of European defense as America is kind of pulling away from NATO. Turkey, I think, is the largest exporter of handheld firearms as well. So it really is a big show of Erdogan saying, thank you for coming. Know who protects you.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly a subtle message there.
Yeah.
Right, let's go to India. Really the Seychelles, but yes. India too. This is a piece from Al Jazeera, and it's about why India's Modi wins so many foreign awards.
Yes, I found this so interesting because Modi recently went to the Seychelles, came home with a brand new honor they invented just for him, Guardian of the Blue Horizon, as they name it, for his work on climate restoration, etc. But on the certificate, they had misspelled the Republic of Seychelles. So they'd misspelled both Republic and Seychelles, but managed to get of correctly.
That's quite extraordinary. So why? Was it just done in a hurry?
Al Jazeera is reporting it was done very fast. And also, I think it's emblematic of how the Seychelles and many other countries Modi has recently won awards from are trying to curry favor with the Indian politician to develop closer ties to India. Modi recently also, I think we all saw recently in Israel, he won the Knesset medal. on the eve of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, actually. So I think there's this big momentum of many awards coming to Modi as many people try and get into India's good graces.
I mean, this piece says that when he's made other diplomatic visits to countries, he's more often than not left with an award, including usually, and one on Tuesday from Indonesia as well, an award created just for him.
Yes. I think also with Modi, I remember the Gates Foundation in 2018 gave him an award for his work on sanitation. He built these new cleaning toilets in India. And I think it's really interesting how these big, maybe American foundations that before maybe used to give out awards for human rights leaders, et cetera, are now kind of turning a blind eye maybe to the unrest or the political strife happening in India and labeling Modi a humanitarian.
And just looking at some of the other countries that have honoured him, he got the highest national honour of the Slovak Republic, the Order of the White Double Cross First Class. That might not be a great title, right?
Yes, and also in 2019, he won the World Marketing Summit's first and only Philip Kotler Presidential Award, which is supposed to be bestowed on a world leader annually, but no other world leader has received that award since then.
Right, so what is it for? Do the awards help India?
People say they do maybe more for Modi's image than India's position diplomatically. Al Jazeera reported that these awards function more as a prop for his egotistical strongman politics. Then, I think you can see that around many leaders across the world as well. It's been reported Trump is trying to rename an airport in Florida, the Donald J. Trump Airport. So I think it's a big trend among these kind of really strong autocratic leaders.
Absolutely. Let's stay in Europe, really, because the heat is insane.
Yes.
And the Guardian's picking up on these wildfires in southern Spain.
Yes, not apparently. It was reported 12 people were killed in Almeria in southern Spain. About 150 firefighters battled the blaze. And the death toll has risen to about 10, with 6 confirmed deaths recently reported.
So we've been reporting this heat wave in our headlines. I mean, it's really having an impact across things like schools and transport and so on.
Yes, and in 2025. It was Spain's worst wildfire year in recent history, and it's 2026. The year has a lot to go. I think we're just continuing to see these heat waves disrupt daily life across much of Europe.
Well, I mean, as we're saying in our heads, Western Europe's recorded its hottest June on record. So how are you keeping cool? Do you have any tips for us?
How am I keeping cool? I think a cold shower in the morning before I go to work really saves the day, and, having a fan blow on you in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. Well, I have to say you're looking very fresh. We're both in white cotton today.
White linen all
white
day.
Linen, yeah. And it's one way to tackle it. Zara, thank you very much indeed. That's Zara Khan, writer, author and former CNN international journalist. And this is The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Now, here's what else we're keeping an eye on today. Iran and the United States have exchanged fresh attacks, further eroding a ceasefire that had lasted just 3 weeks. The renewed fighting came as Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was buried in Mashhad, and oil tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz slowed almost to a standstill. Vladimir Putin is expected to intensify the war in Ukraine, despite Donald Trump's efforts to secure a peace agreement. Sources close to the Kremlin say Putin remains determined to capture the whole of the Donbass. And Western Europe has recorded its hottest June on record, with temperatures more than 3 degrees above the recent average. The extreme heat caused thousands of excess deaths and disrupted schools, transport and power supplies. This is The Globalist. Stay tuned. Now for a look behind the headlines. Here's Monocle's Natalie Teodosi on how Japan's fast retailing group, the company behind Uniqlo, is growing in revenue and stature.
The dynamics of the mainstream fashion sector are being shaken up. Japan's fast retailing group is set to overtake Europe's H&M group and Gap in the US, becoming the second largest apparel retailer in the world, just behind Zara owner Inditex. According to Nikkei, the group, which owns brands such as Uniqlo, Theory, and Comptoir de Cotonnier, has raised its 2026 revenues and profits forecast after a very strong third quarter, with revenues jumping 22% to 1,010 billion yen in the last 3 months. Operating profits were up 46%. Fast Retailing's commitment to textile innovation has always ensured the business stands apart. But more recently, it has also been doubling down when it comes to talent acquisition. Uniqlo, in particular, has secured high-profile collaborations with designers from the luxury world, including Denmark's Cecilie Bansen and Marni veteran Francesco Riso, as well as an ongoing line designed with Dior's Jonathan Anderson. Beyond collaborations, the business has also locked in long-term contracts with the likes of Claire White Keller, who joined as creative director 2 years ago after gigs at Chloe and Givenchy. Its focus on utilitarian, trend-free designs is also helping the business build loyalty among customers and, unlike most of its competitors, attract repeat purchases. While the business remains wary of the weak yen and increased temperatures, which could lead to a dip in winter clothes sales, Fast Retailing is set up to finish the year on a high and challenge some of the industry's longest established giants.
Many thanks to Monocle's Natalie Teodosi. And for more, you can sign up to our daily newsletter, The Monocle Minute. Head over to monocle.com/minute. This is The Globalist. It's 14:31 in Taipei, 8:31 in Zurich. Yesterday, Taiwan's Ministry of Finance released new trade data showing that exports in the first half of this year reached $416.66 billion. That's up 47.1% from a year earlier, almost a 50% increase. It was the highest first half export total on record and the fastest growth since 2010. Strong global demand for AI-related semiconductors and servers has been a major driver behind the surge. Well, I'm joined now by Brian Hugh, who's the founding editor of New Bloom magazine. Brian, many thanks for being on the line with us from Taipei. What exactly is driving this surge?
Well, it is Taiwan's contemporary dominance in semiconductors. And of course, we're in this period of AI boom. And so long as semiconductors remain crucial for that, companies such as NVIDIA, the reliance on high-end models, advanced semiconductors, and hardware in that sense to fuel the AI boom, then Taiwan will do quite well. Taiwan has been termed the Silicon Island by the Lai administration, which now touts its efforts to establish dominance as an AI island. And so that's really driving this very strong economic growth here.
And is that growth, is that export boom helping the broader Taiwanese economy, or is it just staying within that tech sector?
So that is the question, and that's been a question for some time because the average person is not feeling that. For example, prices are increasing, there's inflation, real estate is unaffordable, and so that growth does not always trickle down to other sectors, and that is really propping up the GDP growth. If not for the AI boom, the economy would really not look so good.
Why has Taiwan become so central to the global AI supply chain?
So this is an industry that Taiwan is trying to build up slowly and visibly through the years in terms of dominance in the semiconductor field. The world started to realize the first time how dominant Taiwan had become during the COVID-19 pandemic, with shortages of semiconductors used in everything from electric vehicles to PlayStations. But then now with the AI boom and this desire to have continual growth there, and this view that this is a technology of the future beyond semiconductors, which Taiwan is already a foothold in, there's a lot of effort being put to groom talent and also then build up continuing dominance in the field.
What makes Taiwanese chip makers so difficult for other countries to replace?
That's a question that everyone asks because people do want to not be so reliant on Taiwan. It is a crucial choke point for the industry. And Taiwan would like to keep it that way, especially in light of threats from China, and because this will lead other countries to perhaps come to defense of Taiwan. Part of it is Taiwan's geography, because of the fact that Taiwan is small. So when you do have breakdowns, you can have engineers from one part of the country travel to another. Another is the working culture. Unions are very weak, and people can just work endlessly or be asked to work endlessly by the company. So people don't have these labor protections, ironically, then that contributes to the boom.
And what are the conditions like for labour? Is there a sense that they are being abused in some way?
Well, for one, a lot of the workers in these electronics factories are from Southeast Asia, and they are taking on these so-called 3D, dirty, dangerous, and demeaning jobs that Taiwanese do not want to. But even the white-collar workers, the engineers in TSMC or these other industry giants are then expected to drop everything if there's a work emergency in the dead of night, dropping family and other commitments to just go work. And so the trade-off is high pay, but of course there's that working culture.
And how much of this is about Taiwan just being a sort of a tech hub in terms of actual manufacturing, and how much of it is to do with intellectual property? Is there creativity and innovation coming from the country, or is it purely a factory?
It's actually very interesting because Taiwan was, of course, part of the world's factory, you could say, in the past, in the era of made in Taiwan. Now it's not cheap, not durable goods, but now it's advanced semiconductors. So there's strong know-how there, but then IP is often held by American companies, for example. And so we do focus a lot on Taiwan and supply chain, but Taiwan is, in fact, part of a much larger supply chain there, just because there is so much infrastructure to, again, cultivate talent through Taiwanese educational institutions, but also the enormous investment that must go into fabs to construct semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan. That's why Taiwan is the node in the supply chain that is very much focused on at present.
And what are the biggest risks that could slow Taiwan's exports?
Well, I think particularly the AI field is very volatile. So if there is something like the dot-com bubble eventually, then Taiwan will suffer greatly economically, particularly DeepSeek as a Chinese model, but also one that was not so reliant on this kind of desire for a lot of hardware. It's very advanced based on the software. That would also be concerning this current model of growth within the AI sector. And so I think there are quite a lot of risks, and it is possible there will be a blow up in the bubble eventually. There are quite a lot of young people now, for example, taking out loans to just put all their money into tech stocks with the view that there's infinite growth. And there has been warnings that this is a form of Dutch disease, that Taiwan is over-reliant on one sector and that eventually this bubble will burst.
Brian, thank you very much indeed. That's Brian Hugh there in Taipei. You're with Monocle Radio. It's the end of the week, which means it's time to bring you the latest musings from Andrew Muller.
We learned this week that US President Donald Trump had found something else to cheat at or on other than golf or wives. Ooh. We learned that Trump had turned his attentions to football, specifically the ongoing World Cup, and in particular to the travails of Folarin Balogun, a striker with the United States team who had been dispatched to an early bath in their group game against Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Final decision is red card.
And duly suspended for the next match. We learned that Trump was not having this.
And that wasn't a foul. That wasn't even an infraction.
And had done what, in fairness, any sports fan has dreamed of doing at some point, and made a call.
Yes, I asked for a review by FIFA. I spoke to a man who's highly respected.
At which we learned of a new record for the heaviest lifting ever done by the phrase highly respected. But we further learned that instead of doing what FIFA did when we rang them up this week and demanded the rescinding of that ridiculous penalty Italy were gifted against Australia in 2006...
Lucas Neal cannot believe it, and Fabio Grosso has won Italy the chance of snatching this one in the very last second.
i.e. issuing what struck us as an unnecessarily sarcastic and frankly hurtful retort. When Trump called, they rolled right over.
We begin this afternoon with a White House phone call shaking up tonight's World Cup matchup between the U.S. and Belgium. In a surprise move, FIFA lifted U.S. striker Flo Balogun's one-game ban.
Honestly, it's one law for presidents of the United States and another for the compilers of whimsical news review monologues. But we, and for we in this instance, read literally everyone outside the United States and probably more than a few therein, learned that we were all somehow suddenly Belgian. Righto, if we must, and that karma may still be an operational concept.
After their team scored its fourth goal, a handful of Belgian players did the Trump dance, the one where he pumps his fists in the air. It's a move he does frequently when dancing to the song YMCA. After the game ended, the official Belgian team account on X posted a simple taunt, quote, "overturn this," end quote.
But sticking with the subject of the United States being steered into calamitous defeat by the hubris of its commander-in-chief, we continued to learn, and honestly who knew, etc., that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps were an obdurate contrary bunch who were always likely to make the most of being effectively handed control of one of the world's most important waterways by a military endeavour next to which any of Don Quixote's tilts at a windmill looks like Operation Overlord.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people.
We learned, however, that part of the United States' difficulties in the Persian Gulf were due to Iran being joined in the fight by a surprising, at a number of levels, ally.
We had 111 missile shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan.
Verily, it's like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor all at once. So we also learned in passing of the Muslim conquest of Japan, which, we'll be honest, was a development to which we and the world's media at large had perhaps paid insufficient attention, as all right-thinking people would reasonably agree.
I think so.
But we learned that as well as grappling with the threat of the new samurai jihadi enemy without, the United States was once again menaced by a dangerous, ruthless, and profoundly imaginary enemy within.
I think the concept of us going communist, because one thing that happens when you go communist, you never come back, never comes back. You die in squalor.
All right, lads, hit it. Yes, we learned that, to paraphrase Marx and indeed Engels, a spectre was haunting the United States.
The Communist Party is made up of illegal immigrants, criminals, and everybody that doesn't want to work. Communism is a loser.
At least as big a loser, arguably, as the United States football team. But we learned that though by any reasonable analysis the Communist Party of the United States is indeed a loser, their best ever result in a presidential election being the 1.4% of the vote scraped together by William Z. Foster in 1928, and that the peril they pose may have been blunted still further by a split in 2024 which resulted in the formation of the rival American Communist Party, a left-wing sect sundering over arcane differences of dogma about which no sane person could possibly care less. Can you believe it?
No,
really?
Damn.
Oh,
Whoa.
that blows my mind.
Really?
No way. Blow me down.
But we learned, and not for the first time, that the president's grasp of his nation's history is no more or less than the grasp of anything which might be expected from someone with such famously tiny hands.
Our American ancestors did not shed their blood at Concord and Trenton, Gettysburg and Shiloh, Midway and Normandy, just so that a band of thieves, radicals, and lunatics could come in and loot, pillage our nation.
Thieves, radicals, and lunatics coming in and looting and pillaging the nation being a literal description of how America was founded. But checking out on the subject of sea-born invaders disrupting the locals' way of life,
Tasmania is once again under siege from a one-ton visitor who's become Australia's biggest internet star.
We learned, yes, that the Tasmanian settlement of Pelican Point was once again being dismantled by a seal.
So it's 7 bollards, 3 signs, street signs, 2 fences, and 2 car bonnets, and an unlucky phone box. So that's just this week.
But we were regrettably unable to think of a political figure to whom this braying, lumbering, bellicose beast, wrecking everything in its path and generating agog media coverage while its fans tittered and applauded, could be compared. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. This is The Globalist on Monocle Radio.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS, banking is our craft.
Now, I flagged this at the beginning of the show. I am so excited to try on a new piece of technology. David Phelan is in the studio. He is our tech correspondent. David, you have bought these extraordinary glasses. I've just been wearing them. Just describe them and everything that you showed me they could do.
These are called the Ray-Ban Meta Blazer. You can get other frame shapes. So far, they've all been done in conjunction either with Ray-Ban or Oakley, though that's changing now. And essentially, they have a camera and a speaker and a lot of intelligence, which is all comes from your companion phone. They connect to your phone. They don't do much without them. They work as glasses in any situation.
So your prescription is in the lenses?
Yes. So the Blazer and another frame shape called the Scriber were the first ones that were designed for prescription lenses. You can put prescription lenses in some of the other models, but these ones are designed so that you put your prescription in them, so you can wear them all the time.
So, I mean, you were just taking me through some of the features, and I asked it what I was looking at, and Judi Dench then told me that I was in a recording studio.
Yes, well, it's appropriate, as she has been in so many. I will say it's not the real Judi Dench, it's called AI Judi Dench, but it does sound quite like her. And yes, the voice comes to you through little speakers which sit just above your ears, which can also be used for playing music, as you just discovered. And the voice then answers your questions, whatever questions you might have, mostly correctly.
And what about live translation?
Yes, that's one of the coolest things that they introduced more recently, where if someone's speaking to you in Spanish, providing you've downloaded that language category and you ask it to translate, it will then speak the words that you've just heard in your language through into your ears.
That is quite extraordinary. What about limitations? What can't it do? I mean, if I'm say at a party and I want to know who I'm talking to, will it identify the person?
I think that's unlikely at this stage. It's just possible if you. Well, I don't know the parties you go to, Georgina. They may be full of nothing but celebrities, and perhaps that could be the case. But I think you've hit on something really important, which is what I would love is in the future to be, that they would be an amazing personal assistant that you're walking into a room and you say, "Who's that guy? I really know him," and it says, "Oh, don't worry, that's George from accounts," or whatever. And though obviously there are privacy implications there. When I took a photograph earlier, you noticed that it flashed. Similarly, if you take a video, it continues to flash. So those things are worth noting.
And what about heaviness? Does it drag your ears down? Wasn't there a famous incident when they were being launched and it looked like they were sort of very heavy?
I think it depends on the frame. The batteries are very light. I often wear these all day. There is the curious thing that sometimes when you're outside, you'll get a message from Dame Judi or the AI version of her saying your glasses are getting hot. So you can of course turn them off and they still function to help you see. But no, I don't find them too heavy.
And how do they charge? How long do they take?
They charge. This is it looks like a perfectly normal case, but it's got a charging unit in it. So when you plonk them in, they charge wirelessly from that in about quite quickly, less than an hour, I would say.
So you could just put them to bed at night.
Exactly.
Yeah. And prices?
These new ones cost to use UK prices, £429. But you can get the first-gen Ray-Ban Meta Wayfarers with a classic style for as little as £224. They're on special. And they have...
a career in teddy shopping.
They also now have just released their own frames that are not designed by Ray-Ban or Oakley, the other companies they've worked for, though they are still made by EssilorLuxottica. And these, because they don't have to pay a premium for the Ray-Ban or Oakley design, come in much more affordably at £269.
And are there a lot of people jumping on this bandwagon?
I think people were taken aback at how successful these have been. Meta is easily the market leader in this kind of category, and everyone else is jumping on board. Samsung, in collaboration with Google, have already announced a pair. They're not out yet, and it's believed that Apple is working on a set of smart glasses of its own for next year.
Wow. Let's go on to your Aura Ring.
Yes.
Now, it's not the first time we've spoken about it. What's new about it?
So this is the Aura Ring 5, and if you, I'm just passing it to you, it is very light. It's 20% thinner than previous versions. The Aura Ring 4 was already much lighter and thinner than the Aura Ring 3rd generation, but this is super light, so much so that you don't notice you're wearing it, and it doesn't look that much bigger than my regular wedding band. So that's made a big difference if you want to be discreet about wearing a smart ring.
And what is it doing? What's it measuring?
So it has different sensors in it, including a heart rate sensor, which is done optically, and a temperature sensor. And it means that it can tell lots of different things. It's fantastic for sleep. So you wake up in the morning and it says, oh, you slept all night, you slept for so many hours, and you got this much light sleep, heavy, deep sleep, and REM sleep, and it can judge how ready you are for the day. And one very cool thing that's been around for a long time is called Symptom Radar, which in the morning says it looks like you're coming down with something. And that could be a cold, COVID, or flu. It can't tell the difference between the three because they are all of them flu-like symptoms. But the first time this happened to me, I thought, this is nonsense. I feel completely fine. And 2 days later, I had the heaviest cold imaginable. So it's very good at preempting that. And it even sends you a little message saying, maybe don't make any big decisions today because you take care of yourself.
Extraordinary. And who are the rivals to Aura?
Again, Samsung, funnily enough, also has something called the Galaxy Ring, which has similar sensors and similar capabilities. The chief difference is that Aura charges you a monthly subscription for all the features, which are growing and growing, including ECGs coming to some territories right now and to the UK later, I believe. And Samsung does not charge any kind of subscription.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick look, Samsung has a big launch in London coming up later this month.
Yes, that's right. The 22nd of July, they just announced it. It's going to be in London. It's usually in New York at this time of year. This is the time of year they talk about foldable phones. This is the foldable phone from last year, the Galaxy Z Fold 7, about to be replaced by, I don't know where they get these names from, the Galaxy Z Fold 8. And you will see that when you open it up, that's sort of square in the open screen. It's a big screen, it looks great, and the phone is very thin, but some people feel that that's not what you want from a screen. There's a reason why tablets are not square. They're terrible for showing movies because you've got nothing but big black lines either side. So we think from everything that Samsung has teased that there is going to be a wider version which will essentially be the same width but a much shorter machine, so that when you open it up, it's the same shape as an iPad screen, smaller, obviously.
David, thank you so much. That was so exciting. That was David Phelan, Monocle's technology correspondent. And this is The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Well, to end the show today, I'm joined in the studio by Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture. She is Sophie Monaghan-Coombs. Sophie, did you see David's glasses?
No, I didn't. Tell me about them.
No, just extraordinary. I just have to have a pair. I mean, it was just extraordinary. You put them on and Dame Judi Dench's voice, or whoever you choose it to be, tells you what you're looking at. It can do simultaneous translation. I was just blown away. Anyway.
I think Judi Dench is the only voice that I want doing that. I think anyone else might be kind of horrible.
Let's have a look at what's going on beyond that in the world of culture. So Arles, of course, biggest photography exhibition in the world.
Yes, and this is the kick-off week, and then it will run all the way until the end of September. But this is the main week, and all the photography industry and enthusiasts are all in Arles this week. It's the 57th edition of the festival, and it always brings together historical works and contemporary works in really interesting ways. This year, there is a very big exhibition dedicated to William Klein because it's the centenary of his birth. He actually only passed away a few years ago, but that I'm sure will be amazing. And then in general, the theme is Worlds in View, and there is a big focus on work from the African continent, both contemporary and historical, and also this kind of sense of sort of shifting narratives and the stories that we tell about places and people and how they might change through photography.
What other highlights have caught your eye there?
So I think one thing to point out, there's a special focus on Ghana and an exhibition called Ghana Dreaming Independence 1957 to 76. And this is about the role of photography in the very first years of Ghanaian independence. And it just sounds really wonderful. One thing that I didn't know is that the country's first prime minister had actually sponsored several photo books. And so he was obviously very aware of the importance of the medium and this crucial time where Ghana's finding its new identity as an independent nation. So they're showing lots of those works, which I think would definitely be worth seeing. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight is someone that I think lots of people will be familiar with, but probably more with his painting than, his exhibiting at a photography event. But Gerhard Richter, the German painter, who's now in his 90s, he's, especially in the past few years, he's had a lot of attention. He's had amazing sales at auction. He had a big retrospective at the Fondation Louis Vuitton in Paris recently. But here he's... It's really about at the Luma Foundation, he's got an exhibition that's really about the sort of tension between photography and painting. So he's actually been doing things like this since the 60s. And this exhibition has 116 photographs, which he's painted over. And it's all about this kind of push and pull between the image that's been taken and then how he's kind of working with it afterwards. So I'd also highlight that one.
And then just a very quick look, because we are in the midst of Art Nouveau Week. What is it?
Yes, so Art Nouveau Week is it's quite a young event. It's just in its 8th year, and it's based in Italy. So Art Nouveau is this international style of art and architecture that started in Brussels. Really, you think of people like Victor Horta, and then when it came across to Italy, it became the Liberty style. That's their sort of variation on it. And this week is just about celebrating the Art Nouveau style. So the theme is the sea, and when you think of Art Nouveau, you often think about these kind of natural decorative forms, so that fits in quite well with that. And then there's kind of special exhibitions. You can do walking tours, you can have access to villas that you'd never normally be able to see, and there's just lots of different events that run this whole week, and there's lots this weekend particularly.
And it's a big focus on Italy.
Yes, a big focus on Italy, but not exclusively. And there are, for example, this is also the 100th anniversary of the death of Gaudi, and so there are also events around Gaudi. So it's not exclusively Italy, but this is kind of celebrating the Italian flavour of Art Nouveau.
How fabulous. Sophie, thank you very much indeed. That's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs, Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture. And that's all for today's programme. Thanks to our producers, Thomas Waterhouse and Chris Chermak, our researcher, Josefina Gomez, and our studio manager, Steph Chungu, with editing assistance by Lily Austin and Mariella Bevan. After the headlines, there's more music on the way, and The Briefing is live at midday in London. The Globalist returns at the same time on Monday, and I'll be with you tomorrow for Monocle on Saturday. I'm Georgina Godwin. Thank you for listening.